Call the April 18th meeting of the Lotus Economic Development Commission to order at 7:10 p.m. Do we have any citizens to be heard?
No, Mr. President.
Next item is the consent agenda. Item 3 and 4, approval of the minutes of the last regular meeting and fiscal year ending 2018, revenue and expenditure balance sheet, etc. Does anybody have any questions on either one of those items? If not, could I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion made by Wayne, approved by Diane. All in favor?
Aye.
Item 5 is presentation by Armstrong, Vaughn and Associates, discussion of an action on the FYE 2017 audit for the City of Lotus Economic Development Corporation.
Good evening, sir. Well, hello, board. Very nice to be with y'all. Gosh, I feel like that's high on the volume. Let's step back a little bit. Happy to be here with you this evening. I'm here to present, as Mr. Wooten mentioned, the audit for the year ended September 30th, 2017. I believe you may have your bound reports there. There's just a few numbers that I'm going to actually talk over and everything, but mostly I just wanted to answer any other questions that you all may have, as well as just some of my other usual presentation items. So first and foremost, I wanted to mention that we gave what's called an unmodified opinion. That's a clean opinion. That's the best we can give. We had no unusual items to present to you as far as a very standard year for the EDC. We had no unusual adjustments, nothing that we even had to consider significant adjustments that had to be made as audit adjustments. We had no recommendations for improvement for the EDC. So far, everything, we see good internal controls within the city that certainly apply to you all as well. And also, the corporation was, of course, in compliance with the Public Funds Investment Act. So if you'll actually turn over to page 8, the reports are actually presented in two types of formats, but fortunately for you guys, there's not a whole lot of differences between the two. So I figured I would come to this one because this is probably going to be a little bit closer to what you would have historically seen. So the nice thing about your reports is you can see you've got a comparative year. Your bold column there is 2017. You've got total assets there of $921,000 at the end of 17, and the majority of that, of course, is made up of your cash and your CD. Your accounts receivable from the state represents your sales tax receivable. That always comes in 2 months just because of the timing delay from receiving those funds from the state. So that's what represents what was collected in October and November for the year end. You can also see that there was actually a reimbursement that was due back to the corporation from the city for $267. The only liability you really had at the end of 9/30/2017 was for your accrued expenditures. And this is something we've been kind of looking at historically, but it finally really started to come into play for this fiscal year. The Chapter 380 development agreements that the corporation as well as the city are involved in, we've been trying to accrue along the way based on the numbers that Glenn's been able to provide to us, what reimbursements might be due back to the developer. This was the first year that the first payment actually was made to one of the developers that those agreements were held with, and we'll see those expenditures in just a little bit. But what you see here for the $113,000, that simply represents additional payments that were due that were made just after year end. And so you can see the comparative year is definitely a lot higher than the previous year. It was only $14,000. But even after all that, you have a total fund balance of $807,000. Of course, the majority of this is considered unassigned and just means it's good for any regular operations of the corporation. So any questions on any of that? Okay. Well, to actually look at your revenues and expenditures, if you'll turn over to page 17, this will be the same presentation you would have seen earlier, but now you'll see compared to your budget as well. So for the year ended 9/30/17, you can see your total revenues did come in at $942,000. That looks like a very high variance compared to the final budget. And the main reason for that is I did mention before that we didn't have any significant adjustments, but one of the main adjustments we did make as the audit progressed was that internally, management had recorded those reimbursements paid back to the developer as simply a reduction of the sales tax revenue. And when we looked into that a little bit further, we said, no, really, it needed to be, the sales tax revenue needed to remain untouched, and it should have been an offsetting expenditure down below. So that simply was just the variance there for the budget. You can see overall, though, that even though your expenditures now also look like they exceeded budget, overall, in the end, you were actually to the positive. So your total expenditures, of course, the majority of which, as I mentioned, were the payments back to the developer of $196,000, and that wasn't a true budgeted expenditure, but it was simply because it was a reduction of the revenue budgeted. Everything else you can see was within budget, and you actually had a positive, favorable variance to your budget. And overall, the corporation had a positive change in fund balance even after transfers to the city for debt service of $73,569,000. Any questions on any of that? The majority of the reason, of course, is simply because that sales tax, even though a lot of it is being paid back to the developer, the majority is going up and staying within the corporation. The developer only gets back so much of what they, in turn, turn around and request reimbursement for. And, of course, that's only one key taxpayer. So,
Glenn, is that our relationship with Millworks?
BMC, yeah, majority of that.
Yeah.
Nice operation.
so any questions on any of that? Well, we always appreciate the opportunity to get to work with the city as well as with the corporation, and be happy to answer anything else if y'all come up with any other questions.
Thank you.
Anyone have any questions?
I do not.
Very clean audit, thank you. If there are no questions, could I have a motion to approve the 2017 audit of the EDC?
I make a motion to approve the 2017 EDC audit.
I'll second it.
Okay, moved by Diane, seconded by Joel and Wayne. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion's unanimously approved. Thank you. Item 6 is an update on the commercial developments within the city. That would be Mr. Goolsby.
Just in case anyone had not noticed the banner up at Burger King, it is now open. They are doing a soft opening at this time. They didn't advertise it anywhere. Kind of just word of mouth outside the banner. They will be placing a couple more banners up because I think it's only facing southbound traffic right now. And then here, maybe a month or two, they'll do an official grand opening. The Shell gas station should be opening up Monday.
Monday, okay.
They've had a lot of contractors out there trying to get everything finished up, their stocking and everything. Helotes Cafe. So you'll notice at the bottom, business is closed, Old Town Espresso. That's where Helotes Cafe is going in. It used to be Rhonda's Coffee House. The previous tenant had to back out of her lease, and then Mr. Dempsey decided to go ahead and take on that endeavor himself. So he's got a barista coming in, and then a baker coming in to do a full-service cafe. And I think he's planning on opening the first weekend in May. Hopefully he's still on track with that. Great Harvest, I do not have an update on that one. Chugging. Some of these projects seem to just be going on at a snail's pace. You've seen considerable work over at KFC and Washtub, as well as the Strip Center. That's the Abizo development next to them. So right now, we've got the Pet Barn, Navy Federal Credit Union, and Bandera Road Cafe is going to be relocating into that Strip Center as well. They're taking over about 3,000 square feet.
Oh, really?
Now, when
Heard
did-
they had a lease signed.
I didn't know that Bandera Cafe was moving.
Better visibility by far from where they're
Yeah.
located, and they'll still be able to have their drive-through.
What's Old Helotes Inn? I don't remember seeing that.
That one is new on the sheet. So do you remember where Solar Sports was in Old Town Helotes? They're taking over that, and I'm drawing a blank on the lady's name. It's the owners of Gigi's House.
Yeah, same people, corporation and company that has Gigi's
Yes,
House.
are going to take it over as an event venue. She has hopes of doing something more with it in the future, but for now, that's her plan.
I think she's applied for a liquor license.
She has.
What is Texas Premier Capital?
They're the ones that have the development signs over by, it's Mr. Habee's property, so just north of Bobby J's, where Ooh La La
Okay,
used to be.
strip center type,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah, about 20,000 square feet is projected. Totally mixed use. He wants to have some office, a bank, medical, restaurant, and a little bit of retail is his goal.
Nothing from Joe or Bill on Bitter's property.
Not at this time. And the old Comerica Bank, that's the Todd Stein property on here. He came in and got his permit about 2 weeks ago, I want to say, for demolition.
Demolition,
And-
so they're gonna go ahead with a commercial center.
Yes. The last sketch I saw was 6,800 square feet.
Did they try to incorporate that one lot behind them or not?
They found out there was a restrictive covenant that
Yeah.
prevented that lot
Yeah, that
from,
was in question, whether it was legal or not, but it probably wasn't worth the legal effort to them to.
yeah, Todd's attorneys advised
to
him not to move
fruition.
forward. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just too much. Yeah, they had it, they actually had a contract on it.
Are they still thinking end of May to finish the intersection here?
All of the improvements, what I'm hearing is August for them to be done.
Oh, I don't know why I thought,
Well, the
Supposed to be
Burger,
some
the Burger
substantial.
King and the Shell station will be open by the end of May, but
Right.
they've got a lot of work to do on that intersection with 1560.
Tying in.
I think they mislaid the grade on that, and it's not even feasible to do it the way it's graded in the plans. They're gonna have to do some work on that.
But as soon as that project's wrapped up, they'll probably be gearing up for Hausman Road.
Yeah, and the Hausman Road or 1560 from 16 to 1604 is still scheduled to be let in August. And that's a
When-
year and a half project, so. They haven't pulled it or kicked it back any further. I guess it says $0 on utilities movement, so I guess they're gonna have to incorporate moving the AT&T utilities with the contract, since AT&T has made no move to start moving any of their cable out there yet. Everything else is already moved except AT&T, and they haven't been able to get any response out of them, as usual. The pedestrian bridge, I guess we've got that project on its way now to see if we can get the
Right.
redesignation of the
Mars, all that.
floodplain approved. That'll still take, what, another 9 to 12 months or something, probably.
It depends on the review process, yeah, anywhere from, I would say, yeah, 6 months if we're lucky.
6 months to 2 years, probably. It's ridiculous, but we just have to deal with it.
Glenn, under prospects, what is the place?
The place is the corner of Hausman and Bandera, where the old Compass Bank is. They've had ownership for close to 6 months now. Part of it, they don't know exactly what they want to do. They're trying to maximize their return, and they've been waiting for the Hausman Road project. There's a couple of tenants they want, but they're not willing to commit in the middle of you know, a year-long roadway project, because it'll
2.5
impact
mile Roadway project.
on traffic patterns.
One or two new banks wanting to go in there.
Well, let's just put 4 or 5 while we're
Yeah,
at
there
it.
you go.
Why not?
Chicken houses too.
Or
Yeah.
another chicken place.
Couple car washes.
Yeah, we'll just have to see what happens. We really have, well, the city has almost no control over that, and we have even less than the city does.
Yeah, we're trying to work with retail strategies to get kind of a medical retail, if that makes sense, like optometrists and
Walgreens?
things like that, to consider.
Well, there's too much in play that hasn't come to fruition to have
Right.
any idea what's gonna happen. Have to get the road project started and closer to completion before anybody will commit the money to it to work on it. Any other questions on the future developments? I apologize for being late this evening. I totally forgot about the meeting after getting home late from work. I guess if we have no other business, we'll adjourn the meeting. Glenn?
Sounds good.
Meeting is adjourned at 7:27.